Hey everyone, Phobos here, coming at you with another build guide, and this time we're going to be talking about Whispering Ice Totems on the Heirophant. So this is another one of the builds I've been talking about that I've been kind of working on. Have a bunch more builds like down the pipe as well. One of them's already finished, and I'll probably be talking about that soon. Two others should be finished shortly, but this is the most recent one, so I wanted to make a video about this. Also have the footage to go with it, so typically I don't post a build without the footage, so I'll be linking all that in the description. I think there's like an Elder kill in there, Red Elder, and two other Guardians. I'm probably going to upload all of them eventually because I have footage from all of them, but yeah. Now, one thing about the videos that you're going to see is there's going to be a support in there, and like the build can do the fight without the support, but it's just I'm playing on softcore with my friends, and they all obviously want to do the content too, so I don't want to like do stuff without them. I may end up just running like one Red Elder solo on this guy just to post a solo video, in case people get salty about the fact that I'm with the support in the other video. But it can definitely run the content solo. It's not a mana guardian, so it doesn't give you like insane amounts of ES to make you unkillable, but it's like a curse support basically, and it's pretty powerful. But on Elder, it doesn't affect the portals, which I feel like are kind of like a big part of the fight, because this build can monster the stuff that comes out of the portals just fine on its own. So yeah, I mean, it does provide EE for the portals, but it also doubles the scaling just having somebody else in there, so keep that in mind when you're watching the video. Anyways, about the actual build. So Whispering Ice Totems, and what got me started thinking about this build was it's kind of like the same idea with Dark Pact and the Scorching Ray, right? Where the idea is that you're scaling off something that's not necessarily crit, so Inquisitor wouldn't have been your go-to Ascendency before, therefore Heirophant gives you another option to explode the Ascendency with. Now, Heirophant in this case also gives you an option to actually get a reasonable amount of ES, and the idea is that since if you're going to make a Whispering Ice Totems build, you're probably going to want to be ES because you're going to have a lot of int. This is always something I've sort of played around with, wanting to make Whispering Ice Totem. The issue that I'd always have was like getting enough ES with totem nodes with int, and I tried some version in PoB where it was like hybrid, and it looked like it could be pretty decent. This was like before the Ascendency change, but it didn't look that great, right? So I never really decided to build it, but when they changed things around, I thought, you know, this might be a good opportunity to put Heirophant to some use because you're stacking a lot of int, and int gives you mana, and mana gives you ES with Heirophant. So that's what we did. So I guess just to go over what I have in the link. So we have Controlled Destruction, Elemental Focus, Hypothermia, Conk Effect, Faster Casting, Spell Totem. So the first thing you're going to notice about this is that it doesn't have Cold to Fire in it, which is very atypical for Whispering Ice builds. Now you can do Cold to Fire. It's absolutely fine. The reason why I don't do Cold to Fire in this particular circumstance is because I'm using this Incandescent Heart chest, which I think is pretty overpowered. You lose a bit of ES off the top, obviously, because it doesn't have an insane ES value, but the 20%, 25% of elemental damage taken from hits as chaos damage is what we're really using this for. Obviously, we're CI, so pretty much we just take 25% reduced elemental damage from hits, and then 20% of elemental damage taken as extra chaos damage is kind of just like a nice little added perk, and you still get some decent ES, and your life is based on energy shield, or your light radius is based on ES instead of life. So it's pretty good stuff there, and that's pretty much why I'm not using the thing. This also lets you use an Series Promise. I don't have one in right now. I've been testing with an Experimenter's, or a Silver Flask versus Promise, and for mapping I just like the Silver Flask, but Promise would probably be better for bossing. So, and you can actually use that without the Fire Gem. This also lets you use Frost Bomb, and the thing is, if you're using Whispering Ice Self-Cast, what you can do is you don't worry too much about not having Frost Bomb, right? Because you can put Scorching Ray Totem, or Scorching Ray on a Totem, and it pens the elemental resists up to like, what, 36% or something? It's like a lot of fire or something, or 20-some%. So it's actually better than Frost Bomb in a sense, right, having the Scorching Ray. But since this is already totems, and you don't really want to sacrifice a totem just to be a Scorching Ray bot, the only way to really get pen without it being a hassle and casting it, like you could cast it yourself, right? But then I feel like that sort of just defeats the purpose of it being a totem build and being super like mobile, while just having your totems down and you can run around. So yeah, I just use Frost Bomb, which is nice because you just place it, and especially with increased duration, it stays around a lot. So it keeps you pretty mobile, gives you the pen you want. It's a pretty good setup. Yeah, so that we already explained the links, right? And then I guess we're gonna go over some of the synergies with this build first. So we already explained the links. We got the chest down. Yeah, so the other, I'll explain like some synergies, and then I'll go over the individual gem slots, and I'll also talk about the gear selections for each slot. So I'd say the biggest synergy here that we're using is obviously using this with CI, so we block out the negative aspect of it, taking as chaos damage, make it into like a positive, where we're just taking reduced damage. And then we use Memory Vault, which is really good because you get a lot of mana with this build because you get a lot of int, and you can very easily add mana as well just from getting, like, you add percent mana, which is nice because int gives flat mana, I think, I want to say. So regardless, you're just stacking mana in both ways, so you're getting a fuck ton of mana, and you can reserve it all pretty much because you have so much mana that your mana regen is so amazing, so you don't even need that much mana to cast with. Like, as you can see, you can barely see my mana bar here, and I still have 248, and I just spam the totems, and yeah, no problem at all. And even when I take damage and my ES isn't full, because obviously we have this node on the Hyro, so when your ES is full, your things cost 0 mana, even though in this case they cost 132, and I'll explain why in a second. But even when this isn't active, you can still spam your totems just fine. So don't worry about that at all. And like I said, this allows you to reserve a ton of mana so that your Memory Vault is doing a lot of work. If we look at our armor, we've got basically 20k armor here just walking around. If we pop our flask, we're at 27k, and this is without any sort of, what do you call it, additional armor flask. I actually probably should have, I was going to say, you can put an armor mod on one of these, but you'd have to give a mod, and these are all pretty nice to have, to be honest. So, you have to give one up at your own discretion. You can always run a Dream Fragment as well and remove the chill and the freeze immunity on that flask and put the armor mod on there. But I find that armor is not really too much of a problem. You can tank a lot of things with this, so you don't really need all that extra armor. But you'd go up to, I think, 40-some-k armor, which is pretty goddamn good for ES build. Memory Vault is like a really great item they've added to the game because it gives ES users a way to get armor, and the idea is if you don't want to invest a lot, you'll still get like a reasonable amount of armor, and if you want to invest a lot, you can get a pretty good amount of armor, so it's pretty nice. The 10% increased reservation gets basically canceled out by the reservation on Hyro right here, so you're good there, and yeah. Then, also just to note, that's with the termination, but I'll get into the auras later. So, other items using Astra Menace. It's pretty important to get a good one of these, I would say, only because you're trying to hit this threshold of 1200 intelligence. If you're not close to 1200, it doesn't really matter as much, because the last, like, the duration comes in 100 int breakpoints, right? So it's like 0.15 duration per 100 int, I want to say. And I think there's also just a base duration on the actual spell itself, and then that duration's added to that. So if you're close to like another 100, you want to try and get that, so you get that little bit of extra duration. And in this case, in order to hit 1200, it was required that I had a pretty fucking good Astra Menace. But if you're at 1100, it's not like the build's not viable or anything like that, so don't worry too much about it. Got some rings here, basically just rare rings with int on them. You can use the two, what do you call those rings, Perandus Signets or whatever, but I feel like the DPS gain is very marginal, and you're losing a lot of res, and a lot of, like, ES in some cases. So, obviously you're trying to get a ring with int mana and ES, but it can be difficult, so these mostly have, int and, you know, res, and basically just crafting ES on. I've been hesitant to upgrade from these because I have my res actually worked out perfectly, which synergizes really well with my Wise Oak. So if you can do that, it's great, but if not, it's not the end of the world. So basically you have 35% reduction to elemental while Wise Oak is up, which is insane. And yeah, so there's that. Then the gloves are honestly pretty good. I actually got these for an Alk. That's absolutely insane. Don't expect that. I think the pair before I had was like 10 to 20 chaos. So not really. This build isn't super expensive really because the staff isn't that expensive, but getting a good roll, I say the thing you want to make sure with the staff is that the int is like perfect, because you can get a perfect int roll without breaking the bank. If you're really poor, you can definitely do it with like 17% int or something, but I would try and get perfect int. Obviously getting the 6 socket is going to be the most expensive thing, but it's way easier than a 6 link. The chest is super budget. The helm is budget on softcore. The Astra Menace is, the price of this is pretty down. The rings actually are fairly cheap, so don't worry too much about those. I think because all the Mana Guardians run Shaper such, so they want strength on their rings. Oops, excuse me. We don't really care about strength, so you can just use rings without strength, and the price goes down a lot. And then the boots and the gloves will probably be some of the most expensive things, but they're not even that bad. I self-enchanted the boots. Haven't really tried for the Uber enchant because I got this enchant my first try. So, and these are only like decent boots. They're not like insane boots anyway. They could have way more ES on them. And I think there's only one res, but they do have int, which is really nice. Obviously, you're trying to get int on these 2 slots, int on the rings, and then the belt gives you 15% increased attributes. This is just an insane belt because it basically gives you ignite immunity, shock immunity, which means you don't have to worry about that in the flash setup. And you get 15% increased attributes, which is insane. So, yeah, just good all-around belt. And yeah, that's pretty much it with the gear. And I'll just talk about the Ascendency, where I'm getting all the ES from. So obviously after the ES nerf, it's been a pretty big problem getting lots of ES, right? And the way you solve this with this build is just stacking mana, because thankfully Sanctuary of Thought gives you 30% increased max mana as extra max energy shield, which is huge because this build gets a lot of ES percent from the tree, basically, and from int. So that bit of ES you're getting from mana is getting multiplied by a lot. So that's why you're able to get 9.8k ES. Like typically if you were to do a build like this and you don't go Heirophant, you probably end up with somewhere around like 6k ES or something. It can get really bad. But you basically get like an extra 6k, or rather 3k ES, or basically 4k to be honest, because this is pretty close to 10k. And will be 10k when the build gets finished out. So yeah, you just get a lot of ES from Hyro, which makes it really attractive. And then you get, like I said, because we're not scaling crit, and Quiz wouldn't really be that great anyway. So how do we scale our damage again? Oh, we just add more totems. Perfect, right? So Heirophant is really a great option for Whispering Ice totems. I think it's probably like the best option you can go. And obviously even this node is useful because it gives us a bit more mana. You don't get the Mind Over Matter thing from it, obviously, but it's still really good. Heirophant also really helps with the totems because we don't have to go down and get like these placement speed nodes, which would be sort of awkward because we get tons of placement speed from Hyro. So Heirophant is just problem solving for days for this build, basically. It's like so ideal. When I theory crafted all this stuff out, it's like I have to make this build and try it, and I'm really satisfied with it because it's actually really strong. This is definitely like hardcore viable. It was built in softcore to play with friends, but it's super hardcore viable. Kills bosses really well, and as you'll see in the video content, and is pretty good with mapping. Obviously it's not like insanely fast, and it doesn't have like instant clear like freeze pulse totems, but it's still pretty good because of all this synergy. And I'll just show you the tree here. So basically, like, you're gonna see some weird pathing if you've never done a Whispering Ice build. This is probably pretty close to optimal pathing, but obviously if any of you guys have any suggestions, if you look at this tree and you think you can do something better, feel free to leave it in the comments, but I think this is pretty good. But yeah, you do a lot of weird stuff with the int pathing for Whispering Ice, because int is actually so good, because it gives you basically base damage and base duration, which is insane, and it's giving you ES with this. Well, it would always give you ES, but it's giving you like more ES because it's giving you mana, and then it's giving you ES on top of it. So, just a really good stat for this build. Yeah, you can basically see the general pathing. I think I'm going to round it out by just getting these nodes right here. Put me into 10k yes very easily. I think it's like 10.4k when it's done. So nice big HP pool. And the best part about this build, you have really significant damage reduction against armor, especially with your Basalt and Granite popped, and you have, or against physical, and you have really great mitigation against elemental, especially with your Wise Oak popped, and especially against lightning with this build. We already have 80 max res because we're using a purity. Ideally, you'd be using a purity of cold, but just with how the reses worked out, it was better for me to use purity of lightning, because then I get the 111 across, and then you use the Wise Oak Flask for the 10% reduced all. So it's just going to depend, but obviously if you can use Purity of Cold, I think Purity of Cold is probably the best. It's the Purity that I would want to run if I had a choice. Just because a lot of dangerous things in the game I feel like for cold, like Shapers, Cold Balls, and stuff like that. So, but yeah, so there's that. Oops. And let's get into, I'm just going to show you how the totems cast. I think I already did, but yeah, that way you can just see the placement speed's pretty good. For moving around to staff, you could use Leap Slam to get over walls and stuff. I just have a Flame Dash in, and then I just run around with Quicksilver of Adrenaline. So like I said, not the fastest build in the fact that it doesn't have shield charge, but we're using a staff, and you have to use a staff, so what can you really do? If you want to play Whispering Ice, you're a bit stuck until GGG helps us out. Oh yeah, the links. The other links, aside from the damage links. So this is where some stuff gets interesting, I think. Let's see what we got in here. Okay, so this is just Fall Discipline, Frost Bomb on increased duration with the Summon Stone Golem, which is another thing I should mention about the build, actually, is the regen. If you look, when we have all of our totems out, we're at like 700 ES per second, which is pretty goddamn good. And we have an insane amount of mana regen, so you don't even have to worry about that. But, yeah, pretty good regen as well on the build, and that's like all the time regen, obviously, not your recharge per second, which is here, which is obviously pretty substantial because you have a lot of ES. It's an ES build. But yeah, so there's this setup, which is pretty self-explanatory. Frostbite with Flame Dash here. I didn't have enough room to put Flame Dash on faster casting, but it's not like we're using it a ton, so it's fine. And then this is the interesting one, I think. So cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, less duration, Blood Rage. So the idea here is you get hit and it puts Blood Rage on you. Now, apparently with this setup, just having the Blood Rage put on you and the Immortal Call proccing at the same time, I think it counts as a... let me see if I can demonstrate this by going into a zone. So when... well, first of all, I'll tell you like what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. That would be best. We'll go into a zone anyway, but so what we're trying to accomplish here is you get hit and it puts a damage over time effect on you with Blood Rage, and then you see this Pantheon power, and you look at the second one, 50% increased recovery rate of life and energy shield if you stop taking damage over time recently. So that increases your regen by 50%. Now, because of the way it's worded, because of how regen works in this game, the only thing you're going to see go up is the recharge percent right here. Like, so this is going to go up, but you're actually getting a benefit on your ES per second. So it's just like a visual thing where it doesn't show, but you are getting that. Now, let me see if what I was saying is true. So let's go out and get hit and watch what happens to these values. Wait a minute. These guys... Oh, okay. Looks like it doesn't work the way I thought it did. Okay. Well, we were learning something. So, anyways, what happens is you notice this fades off, and then you get energy shield recharge per second goes up to like 4K. So that signifies that it's working. And the idea is that your Blood Rage is getting procced, and then when you get hit again, the Immortal Call goes off, and it puts the Blood Rage back up. So for a brief second, you have nothing on you because the Immortal Call went off, and that's enough to trigger the Pantheon, because if you were to have something on you all the time, it doesn't trigger the Pantheon, which is the nice thing about this belt blocking Ignite, because you'll never have an Ignite on you, which won't trigger the Pantheon. or will prevent your cast on damage taken setup from triggering the Pantheon. But anyways, yeah, so you'll have the Pantheon get triggered, and then you'll get the ES regen. And the idea is that even if nothing else hits you, so if something hits you once and the Blood Rage is on you, then it only lasts 4 seconds, and after those 4 seconds, you get the 4 seconds of recharge, right? So that's why we have the less duration here. Just to kind of ensure that you don't have this Blood Rage, it just stays on you if you get hit once and you don't get hit again recently. So that's the story with that. And it's pretty good to just get that bit of extra regen. The Pantheon itself helps mitigate general damage over time, and you have a chance to avoid taking lightning damage on hit, obviously. 5% reduced damage taken over time helps with the Blood Rage and just all damage over time. And yeah, I normally couple it with the Soul of Ralakesh or whatever, which is 25% reduced physical damage taken over time while moving, which really makes it so the Blood Rage just doesn't really affect us too bad at all. And yeah, so there's that. And then moving on to our other sockets, we have Crit, Orb of Storms, Increased Duration, and Arcane Surge. So this is where the real creative stuff starts to come in. One of the problems with running a Heirophant that is almost always going to be on full ES, so this happens a lot with a Totem build. In this particular build, it's not as big of a problem because of the Totem playstyle. They don't kill stuff as quick as Freezing Pulse Totem, so you're not as safe. So you need to be tankier, and you are going to get hit more often, which means that your ES isn't going to be full, so you don't necessarily need this setup. But because the regen is so high, especially if you have the Pantheon up, you are going to be at full ES more often than not. So the problem is we want to use our Arcane Surge, but it costs no mana when we're at full ES. So how do we fix that, right? Well, we use a Fervent Mind Gem. Now, unfortunately, these are expensive because I think people are like doing all sorts of crazy builds with that helm from Uber Elder. They're probably less expensive on hardcore, but on softcore they're like insanely expensive. And but anyways, what this does is the 100% increased mana cost of skills actually just like counteracts this. So it's not like when you have 100% reduced mana cost of skills with this that it cancels out all other things. I think it's like additive. So we have 50% here, right? And then we have 100% when we're on full ES. But this just straight cancels that out. And then we get the normal cost of our spell, which is 132. So that's how that works. And then when we get hit, I think it goes to like 160 something, I'm not sure, or 180 something, but regardless, we still have plenty of mana to use for it, so it's not really a problem. But yeah, so that's how you get around that, and you're still able to use Orb of Storms, and you're able to get a nice long Arcane Surge up, which does buffs your damage substantially, as you can see. Hold on, so we're at 4.2, go to 4.8, which is huge for average damage on a skill like this because it hits so many times and there's so much duration on it. It's like 4 point something second duration, I believe. Yeah, 4.78 seconds. Then on top of that, you're getting cast speed from it, more cast speed, so there's that as well. So you really do want to be able to use Arcane Surge, and that's the best way to do it. You can obviously use the gloves, but then you're missing an int roll and stuff, and you have no res on them, and you don't really crit with the build, so it's not really good synergy. Obviously it helps proc this, but usually it's not an issue. So yeah, just lots of synergy going on there. And then our last slot is basically our auras. So we have a Light Enlighten. This build does require a level 3 Enlighten to run everything properly. I don't think there's really a way you can get around that, because to do that would require, I mean, maybe you could with some other weird items, but it would kind of cut into your damage most likely. So this is the most efficient way. Level 3 Enlighten with Purity of Lightning, Discipline, and Determination. You can use something else if you want. You could put Haste on here. I just like the extra armor, so I feel like having 10k, it's a big difference having like 20k armor than having 10k armor, so that's why I use this. And or even like below 15k. I feel like once you get into like the 20ks, you're starting to take very little damage from most things. Discipline, obviously, for our life, and then you run a purity here. You can always run in purity of elements if all your reses need to be fixed or something, because you know, like, you can't afford good rings or something like that. Even though, like I said, these aren't typically that expensive, but if you're having trouble. So yeah, there's that, and that's pretty much the gem setup. And yep, you can see pretty much everything on my bar. I've got the Vol Discipline, which you just keep up while running through maps or whatever, or use at difficult times and bosses. You got the Frost Bomb for your pen, which lasts a long time if you watch. See, it stays up forever when you put increased duration on it. Really good skill. You have a self-casting Curse. You can put Enfeeble in there or keep it as Frostbite, whatever. We have a Flame Dash to traverse stuff. Got our Golem, and got our main skill. So that's pretty much everything. And yeah, this is just a really tanky character, as you'll probably see through some of the videos. And I've already been talking for a long time, so the flash setup I think I already explained, but yeah, pretty much you use the Wise Oak, and then you use the, like I said, you can use an Onslaught or an Series here, and then you just use the Basalt, Granite, and Quicksilver of Adrenaline. And yeah, that's pretty much the entire thing. Another thing I'm experimenting with, or going to experiment with, is taking Alchemist, because it's just really good cluster, and I'm close to it, so may do that instead of grabbing the extra ES. Depends on what I want to do. Oh, Healthy Minds, I almost forgot. This is actually good. So how else are we getting the ES, right? So let's look at the jewels. Jewels, you're pretty much using Int and ES, or like mana or some combination. The reason why I use this one here is because it has 26 Int, which was enough to get me to 1200. So if you can hit a breakpoint, you want to prioritize Int. If you can't, you might want to prioritize other things. Like this jewel is no... I try to get Int on all the jewels, but this one's not like particularly good. It's only like reasonably good. And then this one's pretty good. It has cast speed while staff, which doesn't affect your tooltip damage, but affects the amount of range you can get out. Healthy Mind. So this is the one we use here, and we pick up these nodes, and that's why you see the life nodes allocated. That's the only Healthy Mind I use, I believe. Yeah, that's the fervid one. You could use another one right here if you wanted, and spec the ES into here, but then you'd have to get another jewel socket for fervid mind, so you'd probably have to either go here or here, and it's just going to cost more points, so maybe when you get higher in level or something like that. Yeah, I think those are the major jewels I wanted to show. Yeah, just like the fervid mind thing, that was the only one that was really a big deal. So yep, that's that, and thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions or anything like that, just feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll try and get back to you. Sorry if this video is a little bit disorganized. Just getting back into making the videos, so yeah. Thanks again, and see you guys later.